where's all the money coming from? Well, where's all the money coming from? 200,000 houses a year. How do you pay for that?
We've got a newly installed Chancellor. I'm not going to get ahead of the game here and say how he's going to pay for everything, and you wouldn't expect me to do that.
Surely you've got your own ideas.
I think
you must have an idea of how to pay for this sort of thing.
I think he's been in the job 2 hours, and I wouldn't deign to set out John's plan.
But he's in the job 2 hours, so he hasn't had a chance to think of it.
Michael,
he's got this promise from the Prime Minister he's got to fulfil somehow.
It is the evening edition. It's Kait Borsay with you. It's Times Radio, and it's that time of night where we dive into UK politics. That's pretty much the whole show today. But it's great to be able to dive into this further. That is, of course, the arrival. Andy Burnham is our new Prime Minister, and we're starting to get a sense of his cabinet as well. Not all positions have been announced. There are still plenty that we're waiting for. Let's tell you about the most surprising appointment, I think, so far into Andy Burnham's new cabinet. John Healey. He is the new Chancellor of the Exchequer. Of course, he was a former Defence Secretary. He resigned from Sir Keir Starmer's cabinet, accusing the Prime Minister of being unable and the Treasury of being unwilling to properly fund the Defence Investment Plan. Healey was Economic Secretary to the Treasury between 2002 and 2005, while Gordon Brown was Chancellor in Tony Blair's Labour government. So that is John Healey. Ed Miliband, the former Energy Minister, has been appointed Foreign Secretary. Lou Haig has been appointed as Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and the other person who'd been hotly tipped for Chancellor, Shabana Mahmood, has been reappointed as Home Secretary. Let's appoint our very own first guest. That is Michael Crick. He'll spend the half an hour with us this evening. Michael, hello.
Hello.
Lovely to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. Just a quick summary from you of what you've heard of the shape of Andy Burnham's cabinet so far. When we look at who's there, what is the assessment?
Well, the assessment, my first of all assessment is he seems to have culled virtually everybody who was sort of loyal to Keir Starmer. I mean, the list, Stalin would have been proud of it. Steve Reed, Peter Kyle, Rachel Reeves, Jenny Chapman, who was very close to Starmer throughout his time as Labour leader, David Lammy, Darren Jones. Here, one day you have Andy Burnham going on about ending the infighting in the party, and yet he seems to have annihilated pretty much anybody associated with Starmer. I mean, how's that going to
Perhaps this is how he does it. I don't know. Perhaps this is how he does it.
They're terrified that they won't say another word, but I think they probably will say another word or two. On the Healey appointment, that is really interesting. And particularly because he resigned over the lack of defence spending. Well, is he now going to give his old department the money that he wanted when he was running that department? I somehow think not. It'll go down quite well with the trade unions, I think, Healey's appointment as well, because what people haven't noticed much is that during the 1990s, for 5 years, he worked for one of the major unions. And also he worked in a campaigns role at the TUC. So that will please them and people on the left. But I suspect from the way that Burnham is operating, economic policy is going to be dictated very much from Downing Street. And it'd be interesting to see what role is given to two names that have been floated around for quite a while now. Jim O'Neill, Lord O'Neill, who was actually a Treasury Minister under the Conservatives, working with George Osborne, although he's always told me he's not a Conservative, strangely enough. And also Andy Haldane, the former chief economist of the Bank of England. So they are both people full of ideas of how to get round all these fiscal problems and balancing the books. And of course, given the number of promises that Burnham's made so far, it's very difficult to see how he's going to keep within the fiscal rules without imposing great new taxes or making cuts somewhere. And today, of course, was dominated, in terms of his Downing Street speech, was this instruction, he called it. I'm going to go in there and issue an instruction to end rough sleeping.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
380 million quid for that, his first act as Prime Minister.
Yeah, and how are you going to get rid of rough sleeping? Perhaps he should consult a guy called Burnham, who used to be Mayor of Greater Manchester, who issued a similar instruction way back in 2017. And it went quite well to start with. But now rough sleeping in Greater Manchester is only 27% down on what it was 9 years ago. So Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, wasn't that successful at eliminating rough sleeping himself. But maybe he's come up with some new ideas. But it also shows how he's imposing policies on his ministers without anybody really without having had any consultation at the top of government. His cabinet has yet to meet. There was no shadow cabinet. Normally, when prime ministers come in, they either come in at an election from having been in opposition, and these ideas and policies have been tossed around in shadow cabinet in the party for years and years and years, or it's somebody who moves within the government, having held another senior job, becomes prime minister, and therefore there will have been policy discussion then. What Burnham is doing here is turning up and saying, right, I've got all these ideas, devolution and rough sleeping, social care and so on, and you lot have got to carry them out. And I think that's a pretty poor recipe for harmony in government, and a recipe for making dreadful and possibly very costly mistakes.
All right. OK, I should say 340 million for rough sleeping, by the way, not 380, just to correct the record.
It's very difficult to deal with rough sleeping when you've got high immigration and so on, high illegal immigration.
Let's bring in our guest this evening, the Labour MP Marie Tidball, who joins us. Marie, a warm welcome to you. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure. Great to be here.
Tell me what you make of what you've heard of Andy Burnham's appointments so far. John Healey as Chancellor, Ed Miliband Foreign Secretary, Shabana Mahmood stays as Home Secretary. The Healey appointment, I think it's fair to say, was a bit of a surprise.
Well, I've got to say, I'm thrilled. He's another South Yorkshire MP. We worked really closely together for a long time on steel, because we've got the SS UK sites are in our two patches. And I think what we've seen is a really insightful move by Andy to put this discussion about defence at the heart of economic decision making. And I think that will be read by a lot of people as being extremely reassuring, but also because Andy has spoken so eloquently about reindustrialisation. And there is a really important relationship in terms of turning our economy around, growth in every postcode, in making sure that we do reindustrialise left behind areas like mine in Penistone and Stocksbridge, like John's, which covers part of the Rotherham patch, to make sure that we use that reindustrialisation to build our defence capacity and security. My site made 15% of all global aerospace and defence steel. So I think it's a really smart move. I'm really pleased to see a fantastic South Yorkshire MP. John has been a brilliant mentor to me. And
he's going to have to come through on defence, though. He can't. If we're talking honestly about his challenges, he can't be in that position and not find more money for defence. That is the reason why he left Starmer's government. And yes, about £1.5 extra million was found for Dan Jarvis, but essentially that pressure is now on John Healey, isn't it? To be frank, he's got to find more money for defence.
I think that what that appointment shows is Andy Burnham is not going to shy away from difficult choices and difficult decision-making in government, and has grasped the nettle on that and gone on the front foot. And I just want to come back on some of the things that Michael said at the beginning. I'm afraid commentators can't have it both ways. They can't say, over the weekend, all weekend, Andy's got no plan. And then when he has got a plan and he starts to talk about the things where he's got a plan, that they say, now he's got a plan that hasn't been discussed with anyone. You can't have it both ways. And on this what he said on homelessness today in this announcement, it's a really important shift. And I know that the announcement is expected to provide 1,200 more homes and intensive support for at least 3,000 people in England over a 5-year period. He said when he was Mayor of Manchester, and by the way, cutting homelessness by 27%, having worked as a local government cabinet member myself in the past, that's really impressive. It's a really tough thing to do when you haven't got all local authorities, all government departments rowing in the same direction. And Andy said that that's exactly what he wants to have happen under him as Prime Minister, is that this is a really tough thing to get right and to get solved, but he's going to get on with it and get everybody working in the same direction to get it done. And I know from the work that I did in local government, where you have brilliant pieces at a local level, you get pathways out of homelessness for people. What tends to happen is other authorities where there's maybe less work going on, on less joined up thinking, people will drift from other localities into areas where there's good support. So it, in fact, is much harder to keep the numbers down consistently. That's why we need this cross-government joined up piece of work that Andy's already set out today.
Now, don't you think it's important, Marie, that politicians if they make promises, they're promises that can be kept? Now, you've already admitted there that Andy Burnham didn't keep his promise in Greater Manchester on rough sleeping. He's now promising to increase the council house building to the level of after the war, 200,000 a year in the early 1950s it was. This is after the last Labour government promised to build 1.5 million houses. Isn't the danger with these promises, which clearly are not going to be kept, that you create further disillusionment with the electorate? They think politicians' promises aren't worth anything. Wouldn't it be more sensible to be realistic in these promises?
Well, knowing Andy as I do, the level of delivery that he's managed to effect in Manchester, he knows how to deal with these things and put them in place on the ground. And it is making sure
that sleeping he doesn't. You claimed.
No, I'm sorry. What he knows how to do is to make sure that things are delivered on the ground. And this is about a cross-government piece of work. But I also just want to say, we've delivered already in government, and we will carry on delivering in government. We've brought NHS waiting list down. We have only
so
last
is
week.
The one point.
I'm going to finish, Michael. I had to sit and listen to you. We only just last week made sure that we nationalised steel. There's many things that we're already doing, breakfast clubs, a whole host of things that we said we would do in our manifesto, and we're doing. And I've seen the work that he's done. For example, on disability in Manchester, he put in place his disabled persons panel, which was used to shape his policy there. And off the back of that, he went and made sure that they got rid of the bus charges for people using bus travel who were disabled before 9:30 in the morning, so they could get to work, which, by the way, was something that I was arguing for very much last year.
Where's all the money coming from? Well, where's all the money coming from? 200,000 houses a year. How do you pay for that?
We've got a newly installed Chancellor. I'm not going to get ahead of the game here and say how he's going to pay for everything, and you wouldn't expect me to do that.
Surely you've got your own ideas.
I think
you must have an idea of how to pay for this sort of thing.
I think he's been in the job 2 hours, and I wouldn't deign to set out John's plan.
But he's in the job Chancellor. 2 hours, so he hasn't had a chance to think of it.
Michael,
he's got his promise from the Prime Minister he's got to fulfil somehow.
Michael, Marie, we have some information here. It is being reported right now that Pat McFadden is staying in his current cabinet position as Work and Pensions Secretary. Now, one big hurdle for John Healey and for Pat McFadden is trying to get welfare reform through. That'll be something close to your heart, Marie, too, I know. But it is now the general consensus that welfare does need to be looked at. How will this new government do that without excluding those who need it most?
Well, a number of ways, and I've really enjoyed working with Pat McFadden, as I have done since he was appointed as Secretary of State last year. And key to this is looking at the disability employment gap, which the sector believe can be cut to 14%, which would generate 17.2 billion for the Exchequer. And we're already doing the good work on pathways to work, the work that's happened on the Mayfield review, looking at what employers and workplaces need to do. But crucially, only last week, the amendment that I asked the government to put in place a year ago to involve the voice of disabled people on PIP has happened. Their initial report came out as part of a piece of work on co-production. The voice of disabled people have been at the heart of that work. I know, having had so many conversations with Pat on this, that he wants to see that joined up strategy across those big pieces of work that we're already undertaking, the work that Alan Milner doing on young people as well. So I have no doubt they will grasp the nettle on this very quickly.
I'm going to give you another one, both of you. It's understood Yvette Cooper is to be named as Health Secretary. Again, this is a good one to speak to you about, Marie, and then Michael, I'll let you come in.
The beginning of that sentence, who is being announced?
Yvette Cooper, we understand, will be Andy Burnham's Health Secretary.
Right. I mean, really interesting. I'm very fond of Yvette. She's another brilliant Yorkshire MP that's not too far from me. And she understands the health inequalities faced in constituencies like mine. We've just been talking about welfare. We know that we have to look at those health inequalities and making sure that there's enough appointments for people in areas of high economic inactivity to get the welfare bill down long term. But most importantly, I know that the health of our economy is determined by the health of our nation, and Yvette has worked in that space. When you look back at the work she did on Sure Start,
is she going to be strong enough though when doctors come back and ask for a pay rise, which they inevitably will, whether it's consultants or otherwise? The issue of pay rises, the issue of pay will basically rebound off every single wall here. It is a constant pressure. Does Yvette Cooper have what it takes to tell them no, or to ride out strikes that are threatened?
I mean, Yvette Cooper has been out around the world on a global stage. She's incredibly smart and incredibly feisty, but she's also got a wonderful human quality to her. And actually, that will be key in some of these discussions and negotiations. We'll be working with trade unions and other parties, and crucially those in the NHS and working in the NHS to get to the outcomes that she needs to get to. But I absolutely have no doubt she has a phenomenal skill set in doing that.
Okay, all right.
Of course, she also has to look after social care, which is another of Andy Burnham's great ambitions, to sort out social care. Is Yvette Cooper going to be able to do all of that?
So Yvette Cooper effected one of the most brilliant pieces of work we saw in the last Labour government with Sure Starts. I know because I was a governor of a state.
Was politically easier, and there was money around.
I'm sorry, but the Sure Starts were crucial in terms of children's social care and joining up services. I have no doubt that Yvette will have more than enough ability to draw on that experience to emulate and reflect some of the work that they did to make sure services are joined up as we need in social care, particularly for working age disabled people who have social care needs, to be able to affect the changes working alongside Andy because of the experience that he has himself in that space. And it's something that, I remember going to an event on social care with Andy Burnham back in 2013. So this is something he's looked at and considered for a really long time. And I think it will be a great team.
Yeah, OK. Well, look, Andy Burnham's saying today he wants social care to operate on the NHS principle. It should be free at the point of use. That will be costly. It is ambitious. It is something to look further into. We must leave it there for time. Thank you to the Labour MP Marie Tidball, who is MP for Penistone and Stocksbridge. Thank you for being with us. Michael Crick stays with us. Just to give you the headlines, we understand Yvette Cooper has been given the role of Health Secretary, and Pat McFadden will remain as Work and Pensions Secretary. More reaction from myself and Michael Crick to come here on Times Radio. Stay with us. It's the Crick of it on Times Radio. We're working through some of the newly announced appointments. Pat McFadden will remain as Work and Pensions Secretary, and Yvette Cooper is the new Health Secretary. Michael, should we fill in the dots elsewhere? Should we play a fun game of who's going to get what from the rest of them? Why not? We are going to hear from Anna Mihailova, by the way, our political editor, at the top of 8 o'clock. So I'll make a note of these, Michael, and I'll see how correct you are. In Downing Street at the moment, Lucy Powell is there, Lisa Nandy is there, Angela Rayner is there. We've not heard anything of Wes Streeting. I don't think he's there, is he? From what I've seen so far,
I don't think he's going to get a job. I think that a prime minister who's purged as many of the old guard as he has.
Yeah, but he wasn't the old guard, was he, Wes? Well, this is it. I mean, the assumption at the time, or the chatter at the time, was that Wes Streeting so quickly stepped aside from challenging for prime minister after speaking to Andy Burnham because some arrangement had been made. Wes Streeting is not in Downing Street, by the way. I've just had that confirmed. So Wes Streeting tried to do the right thing, did the right thing. Is this a sense of Andy Burnham's ruthlessness, that he's not prepared to have Wes Streeting anywhere near his operation? Well, go on.
He hasn't got a deputy prime minister yet, has he? So, I mean, I suppose
that's Lucy Powell, isn't it? Surely.
Oh, is it?
Well, no. I'm just saying. Surely it will be.
Well, of course, she's the deputy leader of the party, but they don't always go hand in hand. But if he wanted to be nice to Wes Streeting, that's a job I suppose he could give him. And then Angela Rayner. Angela Rayner, you've got, well, the talk is that she would then get back the housing and communities local government ministry that she had before. Yeah. Although, from what I was saying earlier, this target of 1.5 million houses by the end of the Labour government, well, they're well short of that, and presumably she takes some of the blame for that, for having held that job for the first year or so. But he's got to give something to Rayner, because she was very supportive of him when the Labour NEC wouldn't let him be a candidate.
Okay, wrapping up on Lisa and Andy.
Yeah. Lisa and Andy, goodness knows. Trouble is, I wish I had a list in front of me of all the gaps. She's
Culture Secretary. She could stay as culture.
She stays there for continuity, and I hope actually all the others stay there for continuity, because you need more continuity in government. There's too little continuity, and it really makes it government difficult for the civil servants when they're waiting for their ministers to spend 6 months coming up to shape on a subject and reading everything. And if you've got people in place for a really long time, and Starmer didn't have much churn of ministers, then that's a jolly good thing.
All right, Business Secretary's got to be filled, Attorney General's got to be filled, Environment Secretary's got to be filled. There's still so much to come on the show. We need to leave it there, Michael Crick, for time. But thank you. As ever, it's a big pleasure. Michael Crick, veteran political journalist with us. It's the evening edition. It's Kait Borsay.